All right, everybody, I am back. Good to be back. If you listen to this podcast, if you listen to this YouTube channel, you know that, I love to talk college hoops, but it is generally a pretty quiet time in the college hoops world, except, of course, at Memphis, where Penny Hardaway is signing one 5-star after the other. But generally a pretty quiet time on the calendar. Most teams are done with summer workouts. A lot of teams have actually sent their players home for a few weeks right now as you get ready for the fall semester here. But there is one team that is very much in the news this week, and that is one of my favorites, my boy Mike Woodson. Mike effing Woodson. Yes, I talked about Mike Woodson in Indiana all spring and summer long as Indiana basically hires Mike Woodson, revamps their entire roster over the course of the offseason. Love what he did. I have come around on the hire, and we're actually going to get to see a little bit of Indiana this week as Indiana is one of the few teams that is actually taking a foreign tour this summer. Remember, foreign tours are allowed by NCAA rule once every 4 years. I think most teams are backing off because of COVID, but not Mike effing Woodson. Not Indiana. They are headed to the Bahamas. They play 2 games this week, and they actually play a really good European team called Mega BMAX. They're a team that's one of the top European clubs. They generally do come over during the summertime to play these Bahamas tours. They played Kentucky a few years ago. I believe they actually played Texas Tech when Chris Beard was there. But the point is they're a really good foreign team, and so we are going to see Indiana this week against really good competition. So in the lead up to their tour, which begins, they actually arrive, I believe, on Tuesday, August 10th here. In the lead up to their tour, what I want to go ahead and do is talk about this Indiana team and talk about 5 things that I do hope to see from Indiana. Because as I've said all spring, as I've said all summer, I think Indiana is one of the most fascinating teams heading into the season. I think they are one of the teams that did great in the transfer portal. And now it's going to be really interesting to see how Mike Woodson kind of combines the returning players, combines his recruits, and figures out how to make Indiana a team that once again makes the NCAA tournament. I believe they have right around fringe top 25 talent. It might be the second or third best team in the Big Ten if it all comes together. Will it come together? I don't know, but we should start to get answers this week. So here are my 5 questions about Indiana as they head to the Bahamas. First of all, does Trayce Jackson-Davis look like a superstar? And if you followed Indiana at all over the last couple of years, Trayce Jackson-Davis has been their star, has been their best player, 19 points, 9 rebounds per game last year. And really, whatever you say about Mike Woodson, and I've said it all, his single biggest win was convincing Trayce Jackson-Davis to come back for another season. Now, part of that is I think Trayce Jackson-Davis wants to play in an NCAA tournament. He wants to leave a legacy at Indiana. But part of it is also Trayce Jackson-Davis, as good as his stats are, needs to improve and evolve his game. One thing that both he and Mike Woodson have talked about this offseason is they want to turn him into more of that hybrid stretch forward that NBA teams love. He didn't attempt a single 3-point shot, or he at least didn't make one last year. And for him to play in the NBA at 6'8", 6'9", he is going to have to be able to stretch the floor and hit 3-pointers. So the first thing that I want to see from Indiana, how does Trayce Jackson-Davis look? Because one, I think he needs to improve and evolve as a player for the good of himself, but I think he also has to improve and evolve for the good of Indiana basketball. They have 2 kind of true low post bigs. They signed a 7'1" transfer named Michael Durr from South Florida. In addition, they also have a guy named Race Thompson coming back, who was their 4th leading scorer, 9.6 rebounds a game last year. And if you watched Indiana, part of the problem with them was Trayce Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson often played together. It clogged the lanes for the guards. So Trayce Jackson-Davis, we know what he's capable of. We know he's capable of being an all Big Ten guy. But how has his game evolved? Is he a guy that can now step out, stretch the floor, hit threes? Because if he is, it changes this team entirely and creates a whole new dynamic. Second question, speaking of the 3-point shot, I just want to know how the 3-point shot looks in general. If you watched Indiana last year, I said it all the time, and the bottom line was this. If they could have hit an open 3-pointer, I think they would have gone to the NCAA tournament. I think Archie Miller would still be the head coach of this team. Now, part of it was out of Archie Miller's control. His best 3-point shooter, Armaan Franklin, who has since transferred, and that's worth noting, got hurt late in the season, and there was a pretty direct correlation to Indiana completely falling apart when Armaan Franklin got hurt, but it also doesn't change the fact that as a team, Indiana Indiana shot just 32% from three. Armon Franklin is gone. He transferred out of the program, 42% from three. Al Durham, 38% from three. And so now it's on the other guys to step up their games and to continue to improve the three-point shooting, because if this team cannot hit threes, they're not going to be very successful this year, or they're certainly not going to be any more successful this year than they were last year. The good news is my boy Mike Effin Woodson, he addressed it via the transfer portal and via recruiting. He brought in Miller Kopp, a transfer from Northwestern, who historically has been a pretty good three-point shooter. His numbers were down a little bit this past season. Listen, Tamar Bates, a five-star guard who we'll talk about in a minute. He is a good three-point shooter. I don't know that he's elite, but he's another guy that can stretch the floor. But it's also on some of these other guys to step up and hit more three-point shots as well. I would also add, it's worth noting there were a couple younger guys on the roster last year, Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, who were good three-point shooters coming in, and now it is on them to continue to improve, continue to stretch the floor, because, again, Indiana desperately needs three-point shooting. If I can say any one thing about Indiana, it's that if the three-point shooting does not improve, this team will not improve, but I do believe that it will improve in large part because of the recruiting in the offseason. Number three, what about the point guard situation? And it's really interesting because one place that really Indiana was actually okay last year was at the point guard position, and Woodson still went out and addressed it by signing Xavier Johnson, one of the best point guards in the transfer portal this past offseason. 14 points, nearly 6 assists per game at Pitt last year. He decides to transfer out. He comes to Indiana, where he's reuniting with Kenya Hunter, one of the best recruiters in the country, both from the D.C. area. But I only bring it up to say that he comes in, and he might be, outside of Trace Jackson Davis, Indiana's most accomplished player. The thing is, though, Indiana already has two really good point guards on their roster. Rob Finney, third-year player, former really highly touted, highly regarded high school player out of Indiana, took a step back last year. He's a guy that's kind of battled injuries. Last year, he did play in every single Indiana game. Curious to see what they get out of him, but he did average 7 points and 3 assists per game this past season, again, as a sophomore the year before he was hurt, and he basically put up even better stats as a freshman the year before. So curious to see how Xavier Johnson fits with Rob Finney. Curious to see how he fits with Christian Lander, a former 5-star point guard, reclassified, played college basketball last year. Would have been one of the top high school recruits in the country had he simply stayed in high school in 2021, decides to reclassify. But you now have three, at the very least, highly regarded point guards, two of which have already done it and proven that they can at least play at the college level. And I'm curious to see how Mike Woodson and his staff use these guys in the Bahamas. Do they play two point guards? Do they have multiple ball handlers? Look, this is the world that we live in basketball, where you need multiple ball handlers on the floor at all times. It's just the way we are in basketball right now. And I think Indiana is uniquely able to do that this year, thanks to the returnees, Rob Finney, thanks to Christian Lander, who I'm fascinated to watch. That's not even one of the questions, but I am fascinated to watch. And, of course, with the arrival of Xavier Johnson. Number 4, Tamar Bates. Tamar Bates is a 5-star wing, 5-star guard, combo guard, 6'4". By the way, I did interview him on this YouTube channel, so if you missed it, you search Aaron Torres, Tamar Bates on YouTube. You will find that interview. Really fun interview with Tamar Bates. But listen, he's the first big-time recruit that this coaching staff has signed. More importantly, they got him over a lot of other schools that wanted him. I mean, I think it's really an underappreciated thing that Mike Effin Woodson, correct me, pulled off this offseason. He went and got a point guard who, yes, played last year at IMG Academy in Florida, but he's originally from Kansas City. Kansas wanted this guy. Kentucky wanted this guy, and Indiana was the one that got him. How does Tamar Bates look? Again, he's a three-point shooting is something that he's continuing to work on. He's a slasher. He's a combo guard. He's a scorer. I do think he's a good three-point shooter, but I'm just curious to see how he looks, because we see freshmen come in all the time. Some of them are really good. Some of them struggle, and I am just curious, in that NBA system under Mike Woodson, came from the NBA. We know his background. I'm just curious to see how Tamar Bates looks. And then finally, Mike Woodson himself. Listen, I've joked a lot this offseason. Initially did not love the hire, as anybody who listens to this channel knows, but I've come full circle. Mike Woodson has done everything to a level that I am genuinely surprised by. I didn't think this guy would like to recruit. Instead, he's a dog in recruiting. As I said, got a 5-star Tamar Bates this spring. I said, I don't know how he's going to deal with the transfer portal. Went out and got 3 really good transfers. Xavier Johnson from Pitt, Michael Durr from South Florida, Miller Kopp from Northwestern. I worried about could he get his own players out of the transfer portal who were all in when he got there. He got Christian Lander out. He got Race Thompson out. He got a few other guys out, Jordan Geronimo, guys like that. And so I just bring it up to say everything that I wasn't sure he would be able to do, he was awesome at. Now's the fun part. I knew he knew X's and O's. I knew he could coach. Now I'm just curious to see how he handles things at the college level. Indiana's a deep team. They are a veteran team. They are an experienced team, but also have a bunch of new pieces with the 3 transfers, a couple freshmen, most notably Tamar Bates. So I just want to see what he looks like on the sidelines. I just want to see how he handles things, how he handles rotations, things of that nature in the Bahamas. But I am fired up. This is the only college basketball we're really getting in August here besides Penny Hardaway's recruiting. Fascinated to see how my boy Mike Effin Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers look this week in the Bahamas. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. You can, of course, find full episodes if you search Aaron Torres Podcast on all your favorite podcast feeds. And, of course, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Aaron Torres Pod.